Hi. Alrighty, now that you've had a chance to create your own fossil sort of type of um, event with the flower pressing, and you've seen how that works, we're now going to turn our attention to a specific kind of fossil, and then we're going to start looking at our beads and eventually bead up a necklace. So we're going to kind of turn the page here and first focus in on a specific kind of fossil, and that is also a present form of life that's not an extinct fossil but lives to this day, and that is blue-green algae. The more scientific name for a blue-green algae is cyanobacteria. And a way to help you remember that is that cyan is often a name given to a blue-green color. So you can kind of think about that. It's in a way it's a synonym because blue-green is a synonym for cyan, the color, and bacteria is the specific kind of algae that we're going to be looking at. So these are going to be exciting things, especially because we literally owe our lives to these cyanobacteria. Okay, let me advance through. Okay, so I don't know what that was all about. So what is blue-green algae? So we already talked about that it's better known as cyanobacteria. There are two kingdoms of bacteria in our six kingdoms of life. And this is the bacteria kingdom of prokaryote. That is a type of bacteria without organelles or tiny organs in each cell, including the fact that they have no chloroplast. However, even despite this lack, they use photosynthesis to eat. So they take in carbon dioxide and water, and with the help of sunlight, they expel oxygen. So let's take a closer look at that. How does photosynthesis work? You start with carbon dioxide, like I mentioned, and water. So you can see that on the side there. That is a sunflower, a very modern kind of plant. Taking in the carbon dioxide and water through rainfall. And a crucial part of this is sunlight. So sunlight provides the energy that they need to make this all happen. And then what happens with the help of chlorophyll, which is not chloroplast, but chlorophyll, is the life form changes that through a chemical reaction, as noted right there on the slide, into a simple sugar, which is a carbohydrate there on the diagram. And it also expels oxygen. So it helps produce oxygen into the air and the atmosphere, and then it also converts that to a sugar that it needs to eat. So therefore that's the process of photosynthesis, and that's what cyanobacteria use to eat and live today. Cyanobacteria are pretty small, as you can see. They're a type of a microbe. They can live in all kinds of environments, everything from the equator to the polar regions, deserts, warm environments, humid environments. They have been basically, they've seen it all because they've been around a lot longer than even us humans, and so they have adapted to a lot of different Earth conditions and things like that, and they're pretty resilient. So, and today they're found in both seawater and freshwater, so they've adapted to that as well. So they're pretty successful life forms. Do they offer any benefit to us? They can. So there are some benefits for cyanobacteria. First of all, they assist with some very crucial chemical reactions that are going on as part of the cycling of nutrients in the food web, such as like nitrogen fixation. So they kind of assist assist in the whole web of life kind of cycling through and using nutrients and breakdown and formation. So they're a crucial part of that. And then more specifically, some scientific researchers have begun investigating cyanobacteria for possible beneficial effects. Maybe one of those would be like an alternative to antibiotics, so that when we're sick, we could use these to help us. And that research is known as antimicrobial. So just like antibiotic, maybe antimicrobial to get rid of the microbes that might not benefit us. So what are some of those? Do cyanobacteria hurt us? Well, they can. So the biggest thing is the that you can see really obviously is the algae bloom, or the blue-green kind of skim, and it looks like scum. It doesn't look very appealing on lakes and rivers and around the country, and it is not good to swim in and not good to let your pets drink water that looks like that. So if you see an algae bloom, keep your pets away from it. It's been known to kill animals. It damages your nervous system, and it can damage you and your nervous system as well. Don't go swimming in water that looks like this, because it isn't so much the cyanobacteria itself, it's that they release toxins into the water, and that can really harm your nervous system. So like so many things, there's both good and bad with cyanobacteria. What do they do all day? So they're pretty simple little creatures. They eat, they grow towards the sun, they eat by photosynthesis, and during that they expel oxygen, which goes into the atmosphere, and then as they die, they sort of decompose and form a mat on the sea floor or the river floor or the lake bottom. And that can combine as well with calcium carbonate, can settle down into that, and that can form a layer or a mat of rotted algae growth and limestone. And as we can see, that can build up over time into a fossil. So this is the crucial part of how cyanobacteria become stromatolite fossils. Like I kind of hinted at earlier, cyanobacteria are some of the oldest known life forms on Earth. So they have been here. They've had the Earth to themselves. They go back billions of years, versus humans do not go back that far. So they have been here a lot longer than we have. And over millions and even billions of years, they pretty much had Earth to themselves, because they're one of the oldest life forms. The ancient Earth, when you go back pre-humans, pre-mammals, it had a very different atmosphere than it does today. And so that's why these ancient stromatolite fossils, these ancient cyanobacteria, which date back almost to the formation of Earth itself, they're composed of jasper and hematite, or magnetite. So there was more iron there, and they took in iron instead of limestone. And so over time, as that atmosphere changed, and as cyanobacteria expelled more oxygen into the atmosphere than could be taken up by iron, they changed to a calcium carbonate composition, and that's limestone. So the really ancient stromatolites are in like a jasper and a hematite, versus the more modern stromatolites are algae growth and limestone. So cyanobacteria, they were so common during the Precambrian time, really because they didn't have a lot of competition. They kind of had everything to themselves. So that Precambrian time frame is nicknamed the Age of Blue-Green Algae, in fact. So do stromatolites, we already talked about how modern-day cyanobacteria benefit us. Do stromatolites benefit us? Well, they have, yes. And they eat by photosynthesis, as we talked about. And so some of that, way back in the day, in the Precambrian times, billions of years ago, that oxygen that they expelled through photosynthesis was taken up by iron. That's the iron 2 plus. That converted with oxygen to iron 3 plus. And so as that algae died and rotted, it released silica, like we talked about with the lithification of sandstone and sedimentary rocks, which one of that sedimentary rock could, or yeah, sandstone variety, silica variety could be jasper. Those layers built up. So that jasper, the silica, as the algae died and settled to the ocean floor, and that oxygen that they took up as they were living and photosynthesizing, that got taken up by iron, and that settled to the seafloor too, and that all lithified into rock, creating stromatolites with layers of, instead of limestone, hematite or magnetite. So it was iron and oxygen, and these layers are mined today, right up to the present time, for their very rich deposits of iron ore. So iron is a crucial ingredient for civilization, and over thousands of years of human civilization, and so that is still mined today. So stromatolites as a fossil benefit us. But even more crucial is how they, why do we owe our lives to this blue-green algae, to cyanobacteria? Well, our atmosphere, as we talked about with this iron kind of thing and this oxygen, our atmosphere when Earth first formed was pretty low in oxygen. It didn't start with a lot of oxygen. And so if we were able to go in a time machine, for example, back to this Precambrian time, we couldn't breathe the air. We would die immediately because there's not enough oxygen in it. But thanks to photosynthesis by cyanobacteria, over billions of years, not just millions, but hundreds of millions or billions. So oxygen levels slowly built up to the point at which our modern atmosphere, as we know it, came about. And so that is friendly to life, and particularly human life. So the air we breathe is because of all that photosynthesis work of cyanobacteria over time. So we do owe our lives to blue-green algae, in fact. So that is, I think, a real benefit of cyanobacteria. Now, what we're going to do is look at our beads, and so we're going to take those out and kind of start to examine those and look at those and get started on making our necklace. So let's go do that. Hi. Well, now we're going to come to the last part of our activity, which is making a necklace or a bracelet or something interesting and kind of artful with your beads. So let's take a look at the bag for this session. It should look like this. It's a Ziploc bag, and it has a list of all your materials inside of it. And what I've done is taken everything out and laid it out on the table here. So real quickly, just running through everything. This is a crimping pliers. So this is what you're going to use. This is a tool that you'll use to crimp the ends of the like the necklace or bracelet together so that the beads don't just slip off. So that kind of smashes down the crimps. This is these little beads, and they look kind of like they have a very wide opening because they do. That's what's called crimping beads. And so you should have about like at least 10 of them, and you could have as many as 20. And then you'll also have a hook, a toggle clasp basically, and it has one loop and the other piece is a bar, and the bar just slips through the loop, and so that's how you close it and open it. Then you'll have this bag. This has got the wire, and it's all rolled up. It's 24 inches more or less, and so that'll be enough. If you don't want to make something that's that long, you can get somebody to cut it for you, and probably you'll need wire cutters to make that shorter. Then we've got the 3 types of beads. So this first bag here, you can tell it's the red bag. So the red bag, if you look at it, there's 2 different kinds of beads. There's a lot of these chip kind of irregular shaped beads, and those are quite red. And so if you think back over our sessions, what type of cement in a sedimentary rock turned it red? Well, that was iron oxide, and so these have some iron in them. They're called red jasper, but that red in there is due to a little bit of iron in them. Then the brown, or kind of yellowish brown, it also has iron in it, and that's called ironstone. And that is a sedimentary rock, and it's very soft. So some of the pieces, you have several beads, but some of them you might not want to use. They just sort of fall apart really easily. Then the next bag in the center is kind of yellowish, whitish. This is calcite. So if you think back to the sedimentary rocks, calcite was the cement that was calcium and carbonate. And so we've got these white rectangular beads that are calcite, and you may have some different colors. Mostly they're white, but they can be like reddish and greenish. And then there's this kind of honey-colored yellow, and some of these even have little banding, and that is a calcite as well, and that's been coated, and that is the same material that is found in caves. Travertine. So that's that bag. And then the final bag will be kind of interesting. It has one gigantic bead in it and then about 14 smaller beads. And this is the same stone. It's called Kambaba jasper. And it isn't a type of cement. We've already covered that. This is probably a silica and an iron oxide cement because this is pretty hard. This is calcite cement. This is, if you look at this and think back to what we talked about with the cyanobacteria and the blue-green algae, and see if you can think up some possibilities for what these beads are, and we'll talk in more detail about it in next session, and then we'll bead up our necklace. Thanks.